Okay, let's begin. This week's Parsha is Parshas Re'eh. So if you have the, I always use the Art Scroll Chumash on page 1020. Start over there. The end again is a whole holiday review, and there are things there that that are a little different than the other parshas. Okay, first top line. So it says Shomor as Chodesh Aviv. Watch the month of springtime. Okay, that's what month I will refer to. How do we refer to that month? What do we call what?
Nisan.
Nisan, right? Nisan. The reason why it says guard it or watch it, because we have to be careful that Passover will always fall in the springtime, and that's why, like next year, not this year. Look at since like the Rosh Hashanah, look how early Rosh Hashanah is. It's right after Labor Day night. We don't have so we're gonna have a leap year. It's coming leap year. This coming year is a leap year because if not, we'd have Pesach early March or late February. So that'd be a little bit before the springtime. So that's by Shomor. If you project and see if Pesach is not going to fall in the springtime, you have to have an extra month, which we call Adar Bet, which becoming this particular year will have an Adar Bet. And the word Nisan, as I mentioned many times, all these names of our Jewish of our calendar comes from Babylon. Okay, so we call it Nisan. And the word Aviv, though it's called Aviv is springtime, the month of springtime, but our rabbis break up that word Av Yud Bet, that the month of Nisan is the father or the head month of the Yud Bet of 12 other months, all the 12 months. So it really is the huh? Right. Okay, so it says guard the spring month. And you observe Passover, Pesach, or in this case means the Passover offering to Hashem, your Lord, your God. Because in the month of spring, or the spring month, God took you out from Egypt during the night. Alila says. Okay, we're talking about it's not so simple, this verse. First of all, let's do some of the commentary that it brings down to the Sifrei. Chodesh Aviv. Now, why? Okay, God could have taken us out from Egypt any month. So why was the month of Nisan chosen? So the Sifrei says, Chodesh Kosher. Chodesh is a perfect month, kosher month, meaning lo cham, lo tonim. It's not hot. It's not cold, just nice weather. Yehu, then Nisan, this of course is the month of Nisan, and that was the reason why I went out of Nisan. It was just beautiful weather, and also it's symbolism. Also, just like the month of Nisan, springtime, things are starting to grow, right? Things are starting to blossom forth. So it was a birth of a nation. The birth of Klal Yisrael was in the month of Nisan. Okay, so. That's why we were taken out of the month of Nisan, which is springtime, when things started to grow. Also, I one time said an explanation I love from the morale. I think I mentioned it to you a couple of times, but I always like to repeat it. The morale always asks, why did God make a miracle of splitting the Sea of Reeds to take us out? Why couldn't he do some other miracle? So he says,
Childbirth.
What?
You've told us
the childbirth. Yeah, I think it's very nice. It's childbirth. Because most of the time before a baby is born, the mother's her water breaks, and then it brings about the birth of a child. Likewise, the splitting of the Sea of Reeds is a form of the birth of a nation. When we talk about our birth of a nation, it is Pesach time. Okay. Where are we now? Okay. Now, there's another problem. The verse at the end says, in the month of the spring, Hashem took you out of Egypt in the nighttime. Is that true? God took us out at nighttime? When did he take us out? Anyone there?
Well,
Well,
Marcus Bachoras was Vahi Bachasi Alayla.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But did we go out at night?
Right after that.
But that was during the day. Okay, so
Right.
you're on the right track.
Okay.
Rashi posed that question, a simple question. He says, "Hello, b'yom yotzu." Then they go out during the daytime, and it says clearly in the parsha, in Bamidbar, "Mocharas haPesach yotzu b'nei Israel." The day after offering the korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, b'nei Israel went out. So it was during the daytime they went out. But the answer is Rashi brings down the answer. The truth of the matter is that Paro granted permission to Moshe. He says, "Take them out now. Take out Bnei Israel," and gave it. And that was during the night. So therefore, that's what Torah means that that we went out at night. And the verse says in Shemos, "Vayikra Moshe Aaron Laila." When did Paro call to Moshe and Aaron? After the slaying of the firstborn? At nighttime. He called, "Where's Moshe? Where do they live?" He wanted them to leave then. But Moshe and Aaron said, "No, nothing doing. We're not going to leave at night." Why couldn't they leave at night? Why did Paro's giving Bnei Israel permission to leave at night, right? So why does Moshe refuse that offer? There's nothing doing. I'm waiting tomorrow morning. Go out tomorrow.
He wanted everybody to see us leaving.
Right, because it might appear that we are like runaway slaves. And he didn't want people to think that we're not runaway slaves. We're going off with dignity. So he waited till it was daytime. Everybody should see it. And he left during the day.
Rabbi.
Okay, but the mission was given at night. That's why the pasuk over here says, God took you out of Egypt at night. But really, mission at Paro was granted at night, but we actually departed from Egypt during the day.
Rabbi.
Yes.
But didn't they leave probably very early in the morning because the Egyptians were sleeping and the dogs didn't bark and wake them up?
That's right. Yeah, it started during the day. I don't know exactly early in the morning, but they were able to start leaving. Listen, you're dealing with hundreds of, must have been close to over 1 million people, must have been close to 2 million people departing from Egypt. And it happened in an hour. It took a long time. To get everybody together. Okay, verse 2. And should offer the Paschal lamb to God, sheep and cattle. Now, something should bother you. Is that correct? We should offer the Paschal lamb from sheep and cattle. Is that a correct statement?
No.
In fact, it's a wrong statement. What's wrong with that statement?
We didn't do sheep.
We did
Had
not.
to be a lamb.
But also, you're right. Not only sheep, it says it's sown. It's a bokar, cattle. We didn't have any Paschal. The Paschal lamb cannot come from cattle. It came from sheep. Okay, so what does it mean by cattle over here? Okay, so Rashi mentions that besides the actual korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, there was another sacrifice offered known as the Chagiga, the holiday sacrifice. And recall on Pesach, on our Seder plate, there's two things. You have the bone, the zeroah, and that represents the Paschal lamb, and you have the egg. The egg represents the korban Chagiga, the holiday sacrifice, because in order to fulfill the mitzvah of eating the holiday sacrifice, you had to eat at least the size of an egg. So really, those two things, the bone and the egg, refer to the two sacrifices. So that's what it means over here. We have sown the sheep or Paschal lamb, whatever they brought in, ubakar, and also they brought from the cattle a korban chagiga, the holiday sacrifice. Okay, of course, the verse is not just talking about Egypt. You bring it, the sacrifices, the place that God will choose, the Shakim Shemosham, to have his name dwell there. Okay, so what is he referring to? The place. What?
The Mishkan.
The Mishkan. Yeah, okay, but later on, what it means, the place that God will choose to have his name dwell. a more permanent place. You're right, the Mishkan, okay, they did that while the Mishkan lasts, the tabernacle, but that was temporary. Because later on, they went ahead and they built the Beit HaMikdash. He's referring to the Holy Temple, the Beit HaMikdash, where the Shekhinah, where the divine presence was found, and that's referring to over here. And the thing is that we mentioned many times, you would think the name of the city should be mentioned. The city, Yerushalayim, is not mentioned in the Torah at all, not once. We find parts of it. Shalem, remember in Parshas Lech Lecha it says, "Umalki Tzedek Melech Shalem." The kid, he was the head of the area called Shalem. So that's the last part of the word Yerushalayim. And Abraham, when he offered what attempted sacrifice of Yitzhak took place on Mount Moriah, and he called that place Hashem Yira'et. Hashem will appear, will be seen. So really, Yerushalayim is a compound word. The first one, Yeru, will be seen, and the last part, Shalem, peace. So the city that God appears, and there'll be a city of peace. But the actual city Yerushalayim altogether, calling it Yerushalayim, does not appear in the Torah. Okay, right? Okay. Verse 3 now. Lo sochal olav chometz. Of course, we know you cannot eat chometz. Shivas yomim tochalav matzos lechem oni. 7 days you must eat matzos, which is a poor man's bread. Simple translation only is to mean poor. And why is it poor? Because only make flour and water. That's all. It's two things. That's all. Simple. Now, why do we have lechem oni? Why do we have this matzah? Ki b'chi pozon yotzasim Mitzrayim. Because quickly you went out of Egypt, and because it was like running out so fast, you didn't have enough time to bake bread. Okay, and you have to eat matzah. On tizkor yom seischa miras Mitzrayim kol yemei chayecha. And you should remember the day you depart from Egypt, all the days of your life. Okay, so a lot of things over here. Now, I translated lechem only as a poor man's bread. Like I said, just flour and water. That's all it is. And that's why you can't let say have egg matzah at the same. Because egg matzah is matzah ashira. It's enriched matzah, has eggs in it. Some they add apple juice. So that you cannot fulfill your mitzvah of eating the matzah on Passover with egg matzah. Only regular matzah or shmura matzah with flour and water. Okay. And of course, the play on words. Lechem only can mean poor man's bread, but it's also our sages tell us that let me just get it. Yeah, that it also refers to like onim. What does Hebrew word onem mean? Onem. What? Answering. Okay. So the Gemara Pesachim says the following. Siv, it says oni, lechem oni with a o, oni, vikarino, and what happens? Oh, I'm sorry, it's written the way it is. It's missing. If you look carefully in the Chumash, it's really written oni. The vav is missing. It says ayin nun yud. It's missing that vav after the ayin. So really, if I did not know what's supposed to be read as only, I could read as onin. Which what does onin mean? Onin means to answer. So it's also alluding to a discussion that should take place at your Seder. It should stimulate you to talk about the Exodus from Egypt. So not only is it the poor man's bread, but only speak about it. It should stimulate you to go ahead and have a discussion about what took place. And that's really the source of speaking about the Exodus of Egypt. Besides, we got the mincha, the special mitzvah that one must tell his children the what transpired when we went out of Egypt. Okay, yeah. Oh, and that's why, yeah. But I don't have to say when we covered the Haggadah, when many times all of a sudden you have to uncover the matzah. That's the reason, because the matzah is there to inspire us to speak about what took place during the departure from Egypt. Okay, and sometimes if you notice during Kiddush when using wine, then we have to cover the matzah, just like on Shabbat when you're making Kiddush, you cover the chalus when you're making Kiddush with the wine. So the same thing over here. If you're talking about Kiddush or a certain place where we're only using the matzah, or the wine, that's in Behisha Amda, we only use the wine, we cover the matzah. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah. So it says over here, why do you eat matzah? And we only have this bread because we went out from Egypt. God took us out with quickly. Now, the Gemara talked about two types of times that was called chipozon. The first time was what we mentioned before, the chipozon Mitzrayim, to leave quickly with alacrity, coming from the Egyptians. That was at nighttime. We mentioned before, Pharaoh says, leave now, get out of here. That's chipozon the Laila. So that's one time that would ask to leave quickly, but also we left quickly the following morning. So that's not the chipozon to ourselves. I mentioned before, Moshe Rabbeinu says that he wasn't listening to that chipozon to leave at night and look like runaway slaves. So he waited till chipozon hayom to the morning when Bnei Israel went out quickly. So chipozon can mean the time that Pharaoh wanted the Bnei Israel to be quickly and out at night, but the chipozon, the Israel, the chipozon, but from referring to us during the day when we left quickly and didn't listen to Pharaoh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I think. Oh yeah. Now it also says at the end of that verse, great Himmel, it says, "Lemantis Kor, you should remember, as Yom says as Mitzrayim, the day that you departed from Egypt, call all the days of your life." So that passage is said not just on Pesach time. Do we recall in length about the Exodus from Egypt when we have our Seder, but we also mention all the days of life. Where do we mention it? Where do we mention the Exodus from Egypt? In fact, even the Haggadah talks about it. It says
we also mentioned quite often in Synagogue, davening.
Yeah, where specifically? That we do every single day. By the Parsha Tzitzis.
Yeah.
When we talk about Tzitzis at the end with this verse, you should remember the day you went out of Egypt. Ani Hashem Elokeichem. It recalls the going out of Egypt. So that's in the Parsha Tzitzis during the day and also during the night. But there's a difference. What's the difference between the mitzvah of Haggadah to tell the story or the everyday when we mentioned the going out of Egypt? But the everyday mitzvah to recall, it's simply a recall. We just remind ourselves of it. We will say it in the Tzitzis, when the Parsha Tzitzis or the paragraphs after that talks a little about the going out of Egypt. So it's a simple statement. But when it comes to the Seder night, we embellish on this. We elaborate on the story. It's not just a simple reference to it. So that's the difference between the Seder night and every single day. Right. And it says, notice the verse says, you should remember the going out of Egypt all the days of your life. So the Gemara says the following, excuse me, Yemei Chayecha, days of your life, this is the daytime, like we mentioned it on the Parsha Tzitzis. Call Yemei Chayecha, when you have the word all, it always comes to include something that doesn't explicitly state in the verse. Rabos Halelos, to include the nighttime. That's what I mentioned in the Parsha Tzis night. With that, we also have to recall it at night. So it's day and night. We make a reference to the Exodus of Egypt. So it's very extremely important. I mentioned before, it was the birth of our nation. That's where it all started. So we recall it all the time. Interesting what the Gemara says. Shalmi brings it down. There are times when we are exempt from saying the Shema. Do you think of anything during our lifetime when we say you do not have to recite the Shema?
Oh.
What? That you're not obligated to recite the Shema. Happens occasionally. Look what the Gemara says. Yomim sha'ato osik v'chaim. Say the Shema when you're involved with the living. Below Yomim to osik v'mason. Let's say a person is involved in burying the dead, relative, close relative. Then you're exempt. Since you are osik v'mitzvah, you're involved in the mitzvah. It seems like at the time of the Gemara they did it early in the morning or even at night, and even you try to this day you do it at night. So if for some reason you're involved with the mitzvah burying the dead, either during the daytime or at nighttime, and it's time to say Kriya Shema, you are exempt. That from here you see if you're involved in the burial of someone who's passed on, you are exempt from reciting the Kriya Shema, and also from tefillin. For those for the men who put on their tefillin. Okay, and if we don't have it here in the United States, but I know in Eretz Israel they do bury at night. We don't do this, but they do. Also, if you remember from the Haggadah, it says, according to Usam, is Yimei, it says, the word says, let's get the verse again. Yimei Chayecha, Ayomim. Call Yimei Chayecha, but somehow said, Yimei Chayecha means Ha'olam Hazeh, this world. But somehow we proclaim, we'll talk about it, even Yimot HaMashiach, even when Mashiach will come, we'll speak about that. And I mentioned one time, which the Biblical Gaon mentioned it, if there's another place where the Torah uses the expression all days of your life.
Oh,
remember that? Toby, you remember? No. Yeah, but here, I mean, the actual word cold, this is a little different. You're right. Way back in the beginning, when it comes to the Nachash, the serpent, and the serpent sinned, right? He persuaded Chava to eat from the tree of knowledge, correct? So, what was the punishment that the serpent got? What does it say over here? Let's get the exact translation, the exact wording. Yeah, okay, good. It says, "Al you crawl on your stomach," like you said, Warren. And it says, and you shall eat dirt, or everything that you'll eat tastes like dirt. All the days of your life. So the Biblical Gaon says, look at the same words, called Yemei Chayecha. And the Biblical Gaon associates the mitzvah of Shema, just like by Shema. According to one of the opinion is that call all the days of your life, not only does it mean this world, but even when Mashiach will come, you're talking about the going out of Egypt. According to the Biblical Gaon, it says the same words, called Yemei Chayecha, by the punishment of the serpent, that even when Mashiach will come, he'll still be eating dirt. Right? And it still will be the way it was beforehand. Not just now in this world, but in all the days of his life, even when Mashiach will come, he'll be crawling on his belly and he'll be eating dirt. Kol Yemei Chayecha. Same words, all the days of your life. Okay, yeah. Verse 4, back to Chumash. If you do not have any leaven throughout your boundaries for 7 days. Of course, now outside Eretz Yisrael, of course, it's 8 days. We have the extra day. Now, when during the time of the Beit Hamikdash, when you were eating your Korban Pesach, Paschal lamb. And let's say there was some meat left over. By right, you should not leave any meat over. So you go ahead and you'll have. It doesn't say it over here. Pastor Paul says you have to wait for the first day of Chol Hamoed, where you could burn any meat that had been left over. Might be some pieces of meat still left over. Okay. And when once the Beit HaMikdash was built, the Torah now tells us you cannot go ahead and offer a Korban Pesach outside the Beit HaMikdash. That's what verse 5 says. Lo suchal is you're not allowed to offer the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, wherever you live. You're not allowed to do it once you inherit the land and the land is distributed and every tribe has that particular portion. When Pesach comes around, you must go to Yerushalayim, where the Beit HaMikdash is, and offer your Korban Pesach there, not where you live. Or for that matter, you cannot go ahead to Yerushalayim, slaughter the Korban Pesach, and take the meat and go back to your city and eat it there. It has to be slaughtered in Yerushalayim and also eaten in Yerushalayim. Okay. And it says, so again, verse 5 goes, you're not allowed to slaughter the Paschal lamb, where you live, where God is going to give you. Only in the place that God will choose, which eventually became the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, to have his name dwell there. That's the only place you should slaughter it. This Bachas HaPesach Ba'arab, you should offer the Korban Pesach. Ba'arab means Erev Pesach, the 14th day of Pesach, late afternoon. Kivor HaShemesh, from the sun going down. Moed Tzeitzcham is from the time that you departed from Egypt. Now Rashi says, it says 3 times here. It says Ba'erev, which is translated the eve, which is the eve of Passover. It says Kavod Hashem as the sun goes down. And it's the time when you're out of Egypt. So Rashi says the following: Haresh Shlosha Zamanim Chalukim. These are 3 separate statements concerning the Paschal lamb. So he said like this: Ba'erev Miche shows Lamala Tizbecheo. In the evening of Passover, which is the 14th day of Nisan, after the 6th hour, you are to slaughter it. After the sun goes down, so you eat it. After not just the sun goes down, starts to come up. That's what it means when the sun goes down. Umoed tzeischa atzosor. And it says moed tzeischa, the time that you go out from Egypt. It's talking about the time when you'll burn it, which is you cannot burn anything that's left over from a korban on the yontif, so you have to wait for the first day of Chol Hamoed. Okay, then you could burn the leftover meat. Now in verse 7, Rishalto v'ochalto. Now, although usually the word Rishalto means what? I don't know here. What does Rishalto mean? You should cook it, but not over here. Although, because you're not allowed to cook the Paschal lamb, but many times having this in the Tanakh language, the word bishul could also mean you should roast it. So it has to mean over here roasting, because you are not allowed to cook it. And Rashi quickly points out, Rashi makes that comment, even though it says you should cook it, sometimes it means that, but over here means roasting it, because that's also called in Hebrew, and at least in biblical Hebrew, bishul. Okay, so you should roast it and eat it. The place where God has chosen, meaning you have to consume the meat only in Yerushalayim. Then, after the first day of Pesach, after that's finished, you should in the morning, being what we call Chol Hamoed, the first day of Chol Hamoed in the morning, and you can go home. If you don't want to spend the whole 7 days of Pesach in Yerushalayim, you must at least stay the complete first day, and after the first day is over, the night after the first day. So you wait till the next morning. That's what the Gemara says in the Sifri. Malami, the teacher should to unalina b'Yerushalayim. You must sleep over in Yerushalayim after the first day of Pesach. You could sleep over Yerushalayim, and if you so desire, you could go home on the first day of Chol Hamoed. Obviously, most people actually stay more than one day, the whole Passover. But the minimum, at least, that you must stay in Yerushalayim until the morning of Chol Hamoed. Yeah, that's what the verse means over here. Now here's another problematic verse. Verse 8. You should say Sheishes Yomim Tochal Matzos. What does that mean? 6 days. 6 days you must eat matzah. Is that true?
No.
Leave on the Torah level. But how many days? What?
One day.
Only one. That's the mitzvah. But let's say I wanted to have a bread. How many days must I not have bread? I have to eat matzah. 7. But I'm going to say over here 6 days. Well, make up your mind. That's like 7 days. It says over here 6 days you can eat matzah. How do we answer that? Huh?
Earlier it says 7 days.
Yeah, but over here it says 6 days. So it's a contradiction. How do we reconcile this contradiction?
I heard this answer already.
Okay.
First day it's understood.
No.
Some say like this. Rashi brings it down. Let's see. Sheshes yom tuchal matzos. It's an obvious question. It's a 6 stage in matzah. So Rashi says, umokom acher. But in another place, where the Torah says, Shivat Yomim, 7 days. So how do you reconcile it? It's a contradiction. So Rashi explains it. Shiva min hayoshan, v'shisha min hachadot. Oh yeah. Now, you know that you were not permitted to eat from the new harvest until you offer the omer. It's the barley offering on the first day of Pesach. So it means like this. From the old wheat, or whatever the wheat that you're making your matzah, whatever you're making that flour from, you could use the last year's wheat. So from that, you could eat it for 7 days. But the new harvest, you could go ahead and harvest it on the first day of Chol Hamoed. So if you just, because then you could eat, you have to wait for the omer was offered. And then you can have the new produce. So from the new produce, new wheat, you have only 6 days you have. But if you want 7 days from the old harvest, would be 7 days. The new harvest, 6 days, because you cannot bake matzah from the last year's harvest. And I'm sorry, you can only bake matzah from last year's harvest, but you cannot bake any matzah from the new harvest until the day of Chol Hamoed. So then you will have 6 days left that you can eat matzah from the new harvest. At 7 days, you can eat it from the old harvest. That's the way we reconcile this contradiction. That's what Rashi says. In verse 8, 6 yomim tuchal matzos, 6 days matzah. Of Yom HaShvi Atzeres L'Shem Elokecha, we know the 7th day is also a day of assembly. Yantif, we know the 7th day is Yantif, Hashem is God. Lo Ta'aseh Melacha. And on these days, the first day, at least from the Torah anyway, the first day is Yantif, the first day, and the 7th day is Yantif. You don't go ahead and do, so yeah, it's Yantif. So it's, you don't do any work. Of course, today, out of Eretz Israel, it's 2 days Yantif. Yeah, it's 2 days. You're going to get Yantif in the 2 last days. All right. But in Eretz Israel to this day, it's only 7 days of is Pesach. Okay. Yeah. Oh, after Pesach, you don't have enough time to talk about it. The Shiva Shavuos Tispolach. Now it says 7 weeks you must count. So referring to what we call the Sfiras Omer. When you take the sickle on the standing grain, you cutting it. Is for Shavuos. You have to count 7 complete weeks. Now, Here it says to count the weeks. In Parshas Emor, it says the following: Tisperu chamishim yom, should count to the 50th day. The days. The days. So here it says weeks, and the Parshas Emor says days. So from here we see, like the Amar Abaye, you do both. Malamish and mitzvah lemamne yome or mitzvah lemamne shavuah. That's a mitzvah to count the days and to count the weeks, and that's exactly our custom. Once we reach the 7th day, we say it's the 7 days, which is 1 week, and so on. So, but that's where you see it. Parshas Emor, you say you count the days, and this Parsha says count the weeks, but it's complete 7 weeks. And on the 50th day, of course, is a Shavuos. And I mentioned many times that number 7 refers to something that's complete and wholesome, at least from the Torah. 7 days is Passover. 7 days is Sukkot. The Sheva Brachos, also 7 blessings you say under the chuppah and marriage, and the 7 days of rejoicing after one gets married. And so on, there's a lot of 7s in the Torah. Because 7 always denotes something that's wholesome and complete. The number 8 refers to something that transcends the physical. So that's why when the boy enters 8 days and he enters into the Shalav Rabino, it's a covenant of Rabino, it's on the 8th day. Hanukkah was a victory for Torah. Torah comes from the heaven. So Hanukkah is 8 days. We just said about Shavuot, the 7 weeks. We count 49 days, 7 weeks from Passover till Shavuos. Shavuos is the 50th day, which is the first day of the 8th week, because Torah comes from the Shemayim. Torah comes from the heaven. It transcends this world. So therefore, Shavuos is on the first day of the 8th week. So okay, that's number 7 and 8 as a very important number in Jewish numerology. Okay, you have any other questions that we can talk about the Parsha?
No, but this is a career for the last day of Pesach and the last day of Shavuos.
Yes.
On a weekday.
Right. It's kind of, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, call it for a weekday. Otherwise, if it ends on Shabbos, then we Aser to Aser.
Right, you go from the beginning all the way back.
But Shemini Aser is to read the whole Shemini
Right, because
Aser all the time. Yeah,
because it's the end of the harvest.
Yeah.
And you are correct. That's right.
Yeah. I've been a Rabbi since I was 15 years old, so I remember something.
Yeah, I just remind you that coming this Monday, we start doing what? In the shul. What are we doing to make the next?
Shofar.
Blow shofar. Trua, tekiah. Trua, tekiah. That's it. That's all we do. That's completely a custom. It does not say it in the Torah. It's a custom to prepare ourselves for Yontif, for Rosh Hashanah. So again, the shofar is always it's a means of waking us up and saying, hey, listen, a new year is coming. It's time to improve our ways. So okay, let's start trying to. Yes.
In the Sephardic community, they start saying slichos now.
Oh yeah, we're safe from that. We don't say all those things.
We say only the last week. Yeah.
Right. But they say it really every single day, starting from I think Monday, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. So have a wonderful Shabbat. A good
Shabbat Shalom. Chodesh Tov.
Right. Good. Take care. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Chodesh Tov. Thank you.
Chodesh Tov.